So I think telepathy plays into our evolution because we're going to be communicating in a way that the mainstream has never seen before. We've never seen in the mainstream or accepted that people can do mind-to-mind communication. Well, what's beautiful about telepathy and my daughter is I don't have to hide anything from her. I never do, and there's no point. And there's no lying, there's no exaggeration. She knows exactly why I'm feeling a certain way, or if I'm thinking a negative thought, she knows why that negative thought's there. And she knows what preceded it, and she knows how I am. She knows everything within an instant. And so I don't even have to explain it to her. She totally understands. And so that's something that will really help humankind. A lot of people are afraid, like, oh, I don't want them to know this negative side of me. And I always say it doesn't matter, because they'll see all of the positive sides too. They'll see why that negative part is there, and they'll have compassion.
Hello, my name is Zenka Caro. I'm founder of LightNet, and my passion and purpose is to make the impossible possible. I'm here today with Dalia Burgoin, who really is making the impossible possible. Because check this out, she is teaching the world how to see with their eyes closed, blindfolded, patches on, and not a trace of light. And people like herself are reading books, seeing across the room, seeing behind them, seeing through tables. It's a phenomenon that is taking the world by surprise. It's called extraocular vision, and she is one of the world's biggest experts in this field. She has been training people in all of these things. In fact, I just went to a training for 7 days, and my mind is literally more open than it ever has been. We did things that I never thought was possible. She combines the training with everything from telekinesis to upwards, precognition, all of remote viewing, spoon betting, all these different ideas of how do we get at a better understanding of consciousness and ourselves. This is truly extraordinary. She's been featured on Gaia. She's working with Stanford, ION, scientists from around the world, the telepathy tapes, all these things to really look at what is going on here and how does it work. It is my great pleasure to bring Dalia, who I admire, love, and respect. Check it out.
So my purpose is to show the world that we are much more than they realize, human potential. I mostly focus on showing people that extraocular vision or mindsight is real. And I also do a lot with my daughter, who shows the world that telepathy is real. Extraocular vision is the ability to see without one's eyes. And we are able to see much more than we normally can see with our eyes. And that's the other part of it. So some of the parameters and things I've done with mindsight and extraocular vision is working with the sighted or the blind and getting them to the point where with any of their senses, it could be sense of sound, sense of smell, they're able to tell what things are, and also in a visual-like way. So with blind people, it doesn't matter if they're born blind, if they've lost their vision at some point, if they have partial light perception, if they have no eyes at all. I've gotten all of those kind of people to the point where they can read and they can see their family, things like that. And it's the same with the sighted. If they are blindfolded, if they have a bunch of layers, they are able to still read and see. And it doesn't go it's not just limited to seeing what's in front of your eyes. You can also see behind you, you can see through things, you can see through boxes, you can see in the dark. There is no limit. So when I teach blind people to see, the very first thing they need to understand is that they can see. And a lot of people will tell me, if they see me demonstrating or they see me speaking, they say, if this stuff is real, why aren't the blind doing it? Why didn't they have this evolutionary sense to do it? And I tell everyone the same thing. It's the same reason you're not doing it, because you don't know you can. That's the only reason. There is a lot of skills and abilities we have that we don't have a need for them in modern day society, so we just forgotten that we have them. And I always use the example of phone numbers. And I say, maybe just 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we've used to memorize 50 phone numbers or more. But today, if you ask a 19-year-old, they probably don't even know we can do that. They don't know that's an ability we have because it's not necessary. And it's the same with modern day seeing and lights and all of these things we have to see. We have things to help us with our vision. We don't really need to use our innate human ability, and we've also forgotten about it. And it is actually really helpful for the blind, but they don't know. Most of them don't know. I'm sure some of them have tapped in, but most don't know. And the ones that have tapped in, Sean will actually say, one of my students would actually say, he did tap in a couple of times, and he was told, no, you can't do that, you're imagining it. And so just the first thing is, hey, you actually can do this, and it's actually really, really quick. And that's usually what I tell people, because that's been my experience. You can do it. I will give them examples. I will show them, I will tell them about other students. I'll have them talk to other blind students. I will tell them enough, and then once we get started, they're usually seeing within a half hour, and then they become the new ambassadors. And I had one blind person tell me, why now in my 40s? Why did it take so long? And I remind him of the story of Jesus when he healed a blind man. And so before he healed the blind man, his disciples said to him, who sinned that he was born blind? Was it him or his parents? And what's interesting about that question is the question actually insinuates that he may have sinned in a previous life. And so back then they used to believe that you had infirmities because of a sin or something like that. And he goes, none of that. So in the story he says, none of that. It's actually so that you can see that this is a possibility, that this miracle is real, that this is possible. And so anyway, I remember that story when he asked me that, and I said, this happened right now so that everyone can know that someone that's in their 40s, that someone was born blind, has never seen before, is capable of doing it. That's why it happened. And he says, I can take that answer. He was very happy with that answer. But a lot of blind people, they usually have this emotional thing that they have to go through once they start to see, because they were like, wow, I could have done this a long time. Or they'll face times that people made them feel bad. Like, for example, this one, he really wished he could read one day when he was a kid, and they kept saying, you will never read, because he was born blind. And it just made him, they specifically say you will never read print. I don't know why they said that. Like I think they meant because he could read Braille. And I remember him saying the story, and I said, well, in my head, I thought, okay, well, I got to get him reading the next day. So in 2 days, he was reading. And it was such an emotional charge for him. He couldn't even tell anybody for a while, and then he eventually told his parents. He was so afraid that his parents were going to be so upset, upset that they didn't get to him sooner. But he was... But it was really they took it really, really well. I don't know why they thought something so beautiful would be taken badly, but yeah. So now he's out there talking about it and spreading the word, and so it's just about getting it out there. We don't need implants. I don't want to go too far into this, but you can actually do the same for hearing and the same for a sense of smell. I've actually worked with people who are deaf, and I've worked with people who've lost their sense of smell through COVID. And they will get it back. And so we can get all of these things back. And it's just an anomaly that we're now barely discovering as a modern day society. This has been very well known in indigenous cultures and in other cultures, but modern day, no, not so much. So I believe the materialist model is an outdated model or old physics. I don't like saying that, we're defying physics. I just think that our current understanding of physics is inaccurate, and that we actually just didn't have it correctly. And maybe maybe there isn't a way to get it correctly because we're just limiting ourselves, but there's something about the current model that doesn't actually match with what we're capable of. And so, yes, studying this with a new frame instead of saying it has to match old physics, which doesn't match, it doesn't work, coming at it with a totally new way of seeing it. And so that's more about experimenting and experiencing and then talking about it after, instead of coming in with this frame of how it should fit. So going in with open mind, kind of like a child. I'm always surprised, and whenever I find something that I'm limited by, but we have so many limiting thoughts that we don't even realize are working on working down there. Like I had a limited thought that I couldn't bend spoons for some reason, and I thought I could do every other psychic phenomenon except for bending spoons, and I didn't want to deal with it. But just this week alone, I finally bent my spoons. And I actually bent it in a way that I could not do physically at all, like the buckle. So that was really exciting. So I was able to overcome my own limiting things. So it's really empowering when that happens. Telepathy is important because my daughter tells me, but it's not the only reason I believe that. So my Mindsight exploded maybe a few months after I discovered my daughter's telepathy. And it's as if it was supposed to happen that way. And so my daughter kept telling me a little bit at a time, and I was slowly integrating. It took me about 3 months or so to just integrate all of this Mindsight, the telepathy. My daughter always told me that they were interconnected. They were basically the same thing, but that Mindsight was going to help the world to discover telepathy. And so both of them are intertwined and important. I finally am understanding how telepathy is involved with Mindsight, and how much it involves the senses. And when I train Mindsight, I am expanding people's senses. And so if you have the ability to do Mindsight, I believe it's going to make it easier to develop your telepathy. So I experienced telepathy with Lidu when she sends me images or feelings. When we are doing the letter board, usually before she even touches the letters, I already have what she's going to say. So it's as if we're thinking at the same time. The weird thing is when she's doing the letter board with someone else, I have no idea what she's going to say. When she's spelling, it's just so strange for me to see her spell and me not know what she's going to say. My daughter's telepathy, though, when I'm sending stuff to her, it's mind-blowing. So not only can she know exactly the words I'm thinking, word for word telepathy. I could think of one word, I could think of 10 words. She will be able to spell all of those out. She knows all of the words. She's not just limited to me, it's also to anybody that wants to be open with her and they're not afraid of their mind being read. She can do it with them too. And it's not just that, it's well beyond that. So my daughter has access to my entire mind and my field and my memories. She has access to things I'm not consciously thinking of. She has access to memories I've forgotten about. Sometimes when she'll tell me a memory, or she'll mention a memory and she'll give me details that I totally forgot about until she says it. If I were to read a book, I can go and discuss the book with her as if she read it. I'll say, what did you think of this one character? Who was your favorite character? She can actually tell me who her favorite character was and why, even though she's never read the book. And so if I am in another location, she can tell me stuff about the location that I didn't even know about, and it can be validated. She can also tell me how an event is going to turn out. And so there's her telepathy. It's just being able to read the words of my mind. That's just very basic. It's to her, that's not even real telepathy, but she knows that's what scientists want. So we're actually doing a lot of research with Dr. Diane Powell and different universities where where she's just showing basic telepathy, so basic word-to-word transfer, and I'm at a distance and she's holding the thing herself. So we're doing things like that to prove it to the world, because to her, it's such a big deal to prove it to the world that telepathy is real, so that we can all evolve. So I think telepathy plays into our evolution because we're going to be communicating in a way that the mainstream has never seen before. We've never seen in the mainstream or accepted that people can do mind-to-mind communication. Well, what's beautiful about telepathy and my daughter is I don't have to hide anything from her. I never do, and there's no point. And there's no lying, there's no exaggeration. She knows exactly why I'm feeling a certain way, or if I'm thinking a negative thought, she knows why that negative thought's there. And she knows what preceded it, and she knows how I am. She knows everything within an instant. And so I don't even have to explain it to her. She totally understands. And so that's something that will really help humankind. A lot of people are afraid of like, oh, I don't want them to know this negative side of me. And I always say it doesn't matter, because they'll see all of the positive sides too. They'll see why that negative part is there, and they'll have compassion. So it's this way of communicating without lies, without exaggeration. And so it can be a really incredible, beautiful thing. And my daughter always says, in order to get to that level of telepathy, it does involve some sort of ascension. So our hearts getting bigger and more loving. Another part of telepathy that a lot of people don't talk about, and this is really important to my daughter, is communicating with the spiritual teachers. So there are teachers that she actually, and mentors that she communicates with, and this is just as real to her as here. Actually, that's more real to her than here. And to a lot of people, they think communicating with the angels is, or teachers or guides, they think it's more of a prayer thing, or they think it's a meditative thing, and they're not realizing that it is the same as us communicating, because we're also spiritual beings. So it's the same as us communicating with each other as we are to them, just as real. And so that's another, to Lidu, that is telepathy, talking to them as well. So instead of saying, I'm going to pray, you could actually see it in a different way. You can still say pray, but see it the same as if we're talking to each other telepathically. See it the same as you're talking to those beings. So the moment I knew that this was what I was supposed to do, when Lidu first started communicating, spelling to communicate, I thought it was the most incredible finding ever. And I just remember thinking, I want to do something this meaningful. I want to do something this meaningful. This is such a strong purpose, getting these kids to communicate. But I said, I don't have, it's not in alignment with me to do this very thing, to teach other parents how to communicate with the kids. It just seems too difficult for me. But I want something like this, and I admire every provider that teaches this. And I said, I want something like this. I remember thinking that, and my Mindsight opens, and then I was asked to go to a training and to actually demonstrate. I was just asked to be a demonstrator. I was asked to be a demonstrator. I went and I started training, and I trained my first blind person, and he started to see. But none of that it didn't click until, it can make me cry, but it didn't click until I gave him my arm, and he took it and started walking with me. And then I thought, this is exactly when I walk with Lidu. I said, this feels exactly like what I do with Lidu. And I said, this is the purpose. It just all clicked. I said, this is the thing, the meaningful thing I wanted to do was, and it's helping the blind. And it's just as meaningful as people giving the autistic kids the voice to speak. The biggest struggle in living my purpose is wanting to do it all the time, but I do have young children. And so I have these young children, I have a family, and so there's this constant battle inside of myself of should I be home with my children, or should I be out there doing this? And I have the most passion when I'm out there doing this. That's when I feel the most alive. But then there's always this part of me that thinks I should be home with my children. My children understand, and I do my best to bring them with me. But so I'm still kind of learning and battling with that. My children are very young, and Lidu is also very, very high maintenance. But I'm very happy that I'm really happy that I can bring Lidu in at most. Lidu is a part of this mission. And I'm also happy that my children, they're a part of this too. They and now that I'm talking about this, I can see them being demonstrators, because they are very good at all of this stuff. All they do is watch me, and they do it instantly. So I can see them kind of integrating into it later on. So my advice for anyone that doesn't know their purpose is to, first of all, just be content with where you are and kind of find what makes you really happy in the present moment. Not necessarily because you're trying to find your purpose. For me, for many years, I studied energy work. I studied ways to enhance your sensory. I studied all of the things that I am now currently using in my trainings. But at the time, I didn't know what I was studying for. It was just what my heart really, really enjoyed doing, and it was very valuable to me. And so it wasn't until my 40s that I started to know what I was supposed to do, and it just came out of nowhere. So for me, my suggestion is to find what makes your heart sing and feel alive, and to do it. Something that you can do consistently. And to just kind of do it. And then for me, it's about letting your purpose kind of show itself once you've honed your skills in other ways. I find that in life, life kind of foreshadows what you're going to be doing. I've actually had so many foreshadowing events since I was a child, showing me that this was what I was going to do. And then it became really clear once it all kind of worked out and came together. So the effect that I've had on the world for living my purpose. Most people, 99% of them when I speak, are very, very inspired. Very inspired. They're seeing, wow, this is incredible. We're able to do so much more. I'm so much more. That's the majority of what happens. There is a small part of the population that gets really scared and skeptical. They're really into their where they currently are, and so they don't really believe. But to me, it's how do I say it? This is going to all become common knowledge soon enough. And so for me, focusing on the purpose, how this is going to be common knowledge, how sacred this work is. I remember every single day how sacred it is. And I'm so grateful that I'm given such a sacred job and to do in this world, and my daughter too. But I know that those people are also going to come along as soon as it becomes common knowledge. And so whenever skepticism comes up, I'm like, that's okay, you guys. If you're wanting to get proof and all of that stuff, you can go with any of my students. My purpose is to actually train it and get it out there and speak about it. The whole proving it stuff, that can go to any of my students who wants to do it. I think if the majority of the people knew their purpose, there would be a lot more joy and cooperation. Like, for example, my daughter's purpose is telepathy, and I'm cooperating a lot. And in a way, it's a part of my mission because she's a part of me. But if I knew somebody else's mission, then it's as if we are all working together. And we're all perfectly in this perfect alignment of making these different purposes come out together. So I just think it'll make more harmony for us, more people to know their purpose.